Hey, you. You know you want some of that sweet world according to Jen and Carolyn.
Hey everybody.
What's up, Jen?
What are we talking about today?
I'm afraid to talk about it.
Oh, you have a phobia? That's what we're going to be talking
Sorta,
about.
not really.
Yeah, phobias. More fear. But we'll talk about the difference between the two.
How did we come up with this one?
I think it's a play or associated with my fear of dying, which doesn't rise to the level of a phobia, but I think that a lot of folks get confused as to what constitutes a fear and what constitutes a phobia, because even when you're looking at the definition of phobias, the word fear is always front and center.
Yeah.
And so I thought, hey, let's break it down. And also there's some pretty interesting phobias out there. Not trying to be judgmental, but wow. There's some cool stuff out there.
People are interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting's a good word.
It's true. We all have fears, like I said, but most of which are pretty rational,
yes.
I'd say. There's a root to them.
Yes.
Like, I have a fear of falling off a tall building. It's a pretty rational fear.
That's your survival kicking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about what the difference is between a fear and a phobia. And, we'll talk about the interesting phobias out there and treatment options as well for folks who are suffering from legitimate phobias, and maybe how to avoid having a fear become an actual phobia or an addiction become a phobia.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's what we're doing today. Tune in. Don't self-diagnose.
Yeah.
And just, stick around and learn some cool stuff. So this is going to be actually our first podcast of 2024.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. But we're recording it at the end of 2023. So we're tired as hell. And, we definitely need a long winter's nap.
Yeah.
And,
sickness.
Yep. All
car
sorts of
troubles,
things.
all the things.
Yep.
Santa brought me a lot of things this year that I didn't need.
And just kind of been a twat this year. So hopefully he turns his attitude around. He hears me when I'm sleeping. He knows when I'm awake or some shit. But hopefully he turns his shit around before Monday. So here we are. We're December 22nd, but Happy New Year, because you all aren't going to hear this until the first week of January. So, there's tons of different phobias out there. And after learning the distinction between fear and phobia, I don't think I have any phobias, just a lot of fears.
Same.
So, do you have any phobias?
I don't think I have anything that prevents me from anything that I need to do in life, but
okay.
I'm with you. I have a ton of fears and anxieties.
Yeah.
I really don't love clowns.
Oh yeah.
I really don't like being chased. Like when kids want to play tag or like...
Really? Even a game of tag?
It makes me like scared.
They don't even gotta have a knife or anything?
No.
Out the knife.
And like slimy shit wakes me out.
Oh, okay.
Like...
You wouldn't touch a banana slug?
Like, I get like a gag reaction.
But you went to UC Santa Cruz for like a week. That's their mascot.
I know, but here's something actually kind of interesting about me, and as I've gotten older, I've kind of understood, and I think this will be a fun little case study for our podcast. So when I was in second grade, I developed a terrible phobia of movie theaters.
Interesting.
And I would have panic attacks. I remember the last movie I went to was at the Empire Theater on West Portal to see The Witches. And I had a panic attack in the theater, and we had to leave.
Oh, Jesus.
The next movie I saw was Austin Powers 2.
Oh, wow. That was like the 90s.
I didn't go to a movie theater until I was a senior in high school.
Oh my God, that's like 1998.
I wouldn't go. So, whenever I was invited to a movie, so later on I found out, and kind of within all this, it basically was correlated to the San Francisco earthquake.
Okay, that makes sense.
And fear of being trapped, which I was during that event. And that...
But you weren't trapped in movie theater.
No, I was trapped in a McDonald's. Which also gave me...
I'm not fucking loving it.
Also made me not like fast food, which kind of worked out.
Yeah, that's okay.
But, so we were trapped in a McDonald's. And I just, again, it went sort of diagnosed.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't sort of an what's it called? A correlation connection to it. But I wouldn't go into movies. And then that kind of grew into a fear of, so in my family, when you didn't want to do something, you just said you didn't want to do it. My mom never forced us. Mm-hmm. My dad might have and be like, come on, do it. My mom was very like, if you don't like something, especially if you attached it to a medical issue. So my tummy hurt was something I would say a lot, or I have I feel nauseous. And then I actually would make myself sick. Okay. With that fear. And
psychosomatic.
So again, psychosomatic. So what started to happen was, so no one forced me to conquer that fear and go, come on, we're going to a movie theater, it's fine. Yeah. Like, snap out of it. So that then turned into basically a fear of anything unfamiliar, which hit hard in 4th and 5th grade because I wouldn't go on field trips.
Oh, wow.
And I wouldn't go on, so no one made me go. Okay. And then I wouldn't go on sleepovers either. And basically anything that separated me from what I thought was familiar. Mm-hmm. And in 7th grade, it grew into me not even wanting to go to school or leave the house.
Okay, well, that's borderline phobic.
It got real, like agoraphobic. And again, all of this, I'm not going to go into details, but it was all linked to very real fear and harm coming to my primary attachment figure, my mom, who was going through things. So it all made sense psychologically. Mm-hmm. And then that's when I started going to therapy. And my therapist was like, wait a minute, let's trace this back. Wait, what do you mean you didn't go to movie theaters?
Sounded like it was long overdue.
Yeah. But I appreciate that story because, again, all of this starts when you're a child.
It does.
And that's a common thread that we'll talk about. Yeah. And it does go undiagnosed because kids can't articulate anything. So
and if parents don't know what's up.
My parents didn't know. Yeah. And I just say, well, I'm sick. And then I'd throw up. So they thought I was sick.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, it sounds like based on the American Psychological Association's definition of a phobia, it sounds like you were borderline phobic here.
Oh, yeah.
So the American Psychological Association defines fear as a rational reaction to potentially dangerous events or objects. Fear, for example, may prompt you to take cover during a severe storm or earthquake, or flee from a dangerous animal. We're not in the Serengeti anymore, but okay, sure. Phobias, however, are irrational fears triggered by either specific or general events or items.
And that's really the clincher there. It's something that, we all can agree, like, even if you're not afraid of heights, we all can kind of have an understanding, like, heights are scary and you're up high and you could fall and you could die. Yeah. Having a fear of something like a pillow or something that we wouldn't necessarily, I'm sure there's a word for it, or like aluminum foil or something, but having a fear of something that kind of doesn't make sense.
Yes.
That's where, and it causes that rise in your nervous system. That's really where it's beyond just, I don't like being chased or I don't like scary movies.
Do you know what having a pillow phobia is called?
What?
Pillophobia.
No way. You made that up.
Wait, hold on. That says pillophobia. No, okay. What is the name for fear of pillows? Pillophobia.
Okay.
It's really that simple.
It. All right.
So talk to us a bit about phobias in pop culture. How has pop culture taken the phobia and really monetized it?
Well, and I think this is what we usually end up talking about when we talk about, like, when we did the hoarder episode, when we did OCD, like, people kind of using a term that is a very serious mental disability.
Right.
You cannot function, and we can measure the physiological response in your body. And so when we have pop culture basically monetizing this and capitalizing on this and sort of, again, making fun of it even, that's when the word phobic comes into the nomenclature, right? So I remember watching MTV's True Life. I have a weird phobia. We've got extreme phobias, my strange phobia. And one of actually my favorite shows, Monk. Did you ever watch Monk?
No, but he had obsessive compulsive disorder, right?
Oh, really?
I thought I don't know much about the show. I thought he had OCD.
He's got that. Didn't he have some phobias of other stuff? I don't know. All these shows, so you have, I know, I guess I should have read
I think they're bringing it back.
I love Tony Shalhoub.
I'm pretty unfamiliar.
I loved him in Wings. Did you ever watch Wings?
I never watched Wings either. That wasn't one of my 80s shows.
That 90s.
Was it 90s? I didn't watch that. I didn't watch Designing Women.
That's okay.
All right. Empty Nest. That was one of my...
I loved Empty.
You like all these lesser known.
I didn't do anything. I stayed at home with my parents and watched TV.
You're agoraphobic.
Hey.
close. You were close
it's
to
funny. I
agoraphobic.
can laugh at it now.
Yeah.
TV's my friend. But yeah, like I said, leave it to Hollywood to capitalize on phobias. And then you even have shows like Fear Factor where you're sort of told to face your fear for money. And I don't know how we missed this, Jen, but there was an hour-long special in the 2000s called Now or Never, Face Your Fears, hosted by Jerry Springer and someone named Chris McGaha. I have no idea who that is. But where regular people face their deepest fears for money.
Ooh, that's
so is it really a fear then if you can overcome it for money? I don't know.
I don't know, honestly.
Like, I would kiss a banana slug if someone gave me
$50,000.
I'd probably do it for 1,000.
Definitely not a phobia then. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So I think, as we do on this show, we love to go over the history of things. So this is the history of phobias brought to you by WordPress. So the first written reference to phobic problems that we have is in the works of the ancient Greek physician Hippocrates. He invented medicine. This is way back in like 470 to 410 BC.
Before Jesus.
Before Christ, bro. In his works called the Seventh Book of Epidemics, Hippocrates described a condition in a man named Nicanor. Whenever Nicanor went out drinking, he would get terrified of the flute, or maybe the flute music in parentheses, played by the musicians.
I think flute's probably a euphemism for like penis or
maybe.
something.
That's what Freud would have said, but we had to wait thousands of years until we got to Freud. So, as Hippocrates wrote, when the piper began to play, the music immediately threw him into such a great fright that he was not able to bear the disorder of it. Oddly, the flute music only bothered Nicanor at night for some reason. In the daylight, he was fine. Awesome.
Cool.
Who the fuck knows what was going on there? But Hippocrates didn't actually come up with the term phobia. The word wasn't used until nearly 500 years later when a Roman doctor, Celsus, used the word hydrophobia, literally fear of water, to describe someone who seemed to have a horror of water due to rabies. So it says people with advanced rabies may have tremendous thirst but be unable to drink and are adverse to water.
Oh,
that's fascinating.
Sucks.
That's not a phobia. That's a physiological fucked up reaction to rabies.
But they can't drink?
I guess
they're afraid of water?
I guess so. I'll take those shots directly into my abdomen to avoid that.
Oh, that
like when
sucks.
I almost got attacked by a raccoon in my own backyard a couple of months ago. That was awesome. I have never been so terrified. I've been held up at gunpoint, and I was way more scared when this raccoon was coming at me.
Raccoons are fucked up.
Dude, I'd fallen asleep upstairs. And all of a sudden, I heard my husband screaming outside.
Oh, that's not nice.
And the dog crying.
Oh, no.
Like, squealing and freaking out. I come running down the stairs, and in the backyard, my husband's got, like, a bat. There's raccoons on my dog.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, because they were living under the
Our
deck.
mascot.
Yeah, there were raccoons. I know, these trash pandas were attacking my dog. I don't know what's going on. I'm half asleep.
Oh, no.
I'm under the influence of my nightly 5 milligrams of cannabis. And I go outside. I've got shorts on, no shoes. All of a sudden, this motherfucker is running at me. It came within maybe 6 inches of me.
Shit.
Thank God Bill had a bat, and instead of beating it to death, which I would have done, he like pushed it away with the bat, and fortunately it ran off.
Oh, shit.
It was terrifying. But
Darla, okay?
She was fine. Fortunately, she has all her shots. But folks, if you ever need to get rid of raccoons, you can purchase coyote urine on Amazon.
Ew.
It worked.
Gross.
Yep, it worked through some
cayenne.
Cayenne. We threw cayenne back there, coyote urine, and peppermint. We were hedging our bets, man. We weren't about to be attacked by a goddamn raccoon. We did everything, and they went away. Huh, they're gone. Knock on wood, we have not seen those motherfuckers. So, anyway.
Raccoons were in my begonias. That's my story with raccoons.
Rabies and begonias. Yeah. So, origin of the term phobia. Phobos was the son of Ares, the Greek god of war. The story goes that Phobos was a frightening and formidable god, so much so that warriors would paint his picture on their shields to give their enemies a real fright and to get them to run away in terror. So a phobic reaction resembles someone terrified of something.
Okay.
The first, that makes sense. The first relatively modern use of the word phobia wasn't until 1786 when, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, an unknown writer in the Columbian magazine defined the word as meaning meaning a fear of an imaginary evil or an undue fear of a real one. And then our buddy Freud in 1895 noticed that while some things gross us out.
Love that word.
I've never heard it until I did research for this episode. Most people, at least a little, such as snakes, death, or getting old. Other things only bother a few people, such as a fear of leaving the house. Okay, so years later, Freud wrote about a little boy named Hans, who after being terrified by a horse in the street, developed a strong fear of horses. Freud believed that the fear was actually unconsciously a fear of the boy's father related to having loving feelings about his mother. Of course!
I don't think that's true.
Thanks,
I think
Freud.
the horse really fucking scared him.
Yeah, horses are big animals. And when you're a little child, they're really scary. As an adult, I find them scary.
Yes, totally. I could see that, but okay.
Damn Freud.
Okay.
So, all right, Carolyn, this is a bit confusing, as we kind of alluded to. Phobias are fears, and but they're two different things. Yet, in the definition of certain phobias, the word fear is used all the time. What's the difference between a fear and a phobia?
Well, you're right. It is really confusing. So let me see if I can help, but I'll probably just confuse us more.
Great.
So phobias reside, think of it like the umbrella term is anxiety disorders. And even in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual number 5, which basically organizes mental health disorders for medical reimbursement and medical credibility. Just going to put that out there.
Yeah.
So phobias fall under the heading of anxiety.
Okay.
Any type of disorder that we're talking about, any type of phobia that we're listing, just think of it more as an anxiety issue. And
all right.
So that fear response is, again, when we are afraid, that a fear is an emotion, and it can be real or perceived in imminent threat, whereas anxiety is really just the anticipation of future threat. So think panic attacks, which is a type of fear response.
Okay.
So we are sort of, the two states are going to overlap, but they differ because fear is associated with a surge of autonomic arousal.
Okay.
So basically your sympathetic nervous system, so you have the fight or flight response, you get adrenaline, you get cortisol, you get brain neurotransmitters. So that's what's different when you're having that emotion, it triggers that nervous system response.
Okay.
And you're going to have an associated thought of imminent danger. You're going to want to have escape behaviors. And anxiety is, again, more, I'm tense because something could happen versus something's actually happening and I'm being vigilant. It's less, anxiety is more about the muscle tension and the vigilance and preparation for future danger, and cautious or avoidant behaviors. But the fear and what then turns into the phobia is the actual avoidance of. So phobia is really, I'm not going to fuck with that, if that makes sense.
Kind of. You can't have either without anxiety.
They're all anxiety disorders.
Okay. All right.
And we can even break that down and say, okay, well, what would make someone so anxious?
Yeah.
Again, if there is an imminent threat or danger, so when you were telling the raccoon example, that makes sense.
Yeah, there was an animal coming at me that could have bit me.
Now, that's not a phobia.
No.
But we could, let's say that happened, you could develop a phobia based off that traumatic event.
I'm no longer going into my yard. I have yardophobia.
Or you could transfer that into like what I did. So I was afraid of earthquakes. That got transferred into separation and being in the movie theater.
Okay.
So again, the phobia, think of the phobia as the behavior. And, again, all of this is developmental.
Okay.
So, kids have a lot of fears, and you might even say you could consider that fear the phobia, but it's developmental. They're going to be afraid of the dark. They're going to be afraid of,
it's going to resolve.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah,
I've seen kids who are like, I don't want to have that. Like, that's weird. Get it away, and they'll have a visceral reaction. But afraid of the dark, unless you're me and you're still afraid of that. But again, fear can be reduced to avoidance. And because individuals with anxiety disorders do overestimate the danger in situations, they often fear or avoid once things develop and go untreated. So again, with my case study, it's going to persist and grow if you don't do anything about it. So what starts off maybe as a little fear of something then can grow into an irrational belief system. And now that's a phobia when you actually are avoiding things, or you even the thought of it or the sight of it induces that same physiological stimulus. So,
that makes sense.
You know, people who have specific phobias are fearful, anxious about or avoidant of objects and situations. The cognitive ideation can be anything. And like I said, it's brought on immediately by the phobia or sometimes even just talk. And phobias are always specific. They always are going to provoke immediate fear, anxiety responses. You're going to actively avoid it, or if you have to endure it, it's intense, out of proportion. According to the DSM, it's got to last more than 6 months. But I don't know how specific that would be. And like I said, anything that really is preventing you from participating and functioning, quote unquote, normally. I like to think of it as, again, it's causing distress and impairment. So that means if you're socially, occupationally, or functionally, and it can't be due to any other mental diagnosis or trauma. And it can't be due to drugs or anything physiological.
That makes sense.
So, and there are instances, where I think what makes it difficult for the public to understand and kind of we laugh because we're uncomfortable or it seems odd. Like I joke when I say the pillow phobia. That's silly. Pillows are not something.
But there are some people who are genuinely terrified of pillows, and that's gotta suck, right?
What if someone suffocated you with a pillow? That would make sense. So I think, whenever we're, laughing or we're making fun of something, having compassion for any time something may not be real. But it can be true for you. And I think especially when we're working with kids or really anyone who's going through something, something can feel really true even if it's not real.
Well, it sounds like it's rooted in something that is very real and sometimes manifests into something quote unquote irrational. But it's rational for that person because the association is there.
And I don't always think you have to force yourself to treat it. I don't like clowns. I don't need to desensitize
That's okay. It's okay to not like clowns, but it also sounds like an untreated or unaddressed fear could over time turn into a phobia.
Well, and again, if I can't talk about the trauma as a little girl of being trapped in it during an earthquake, what I can make sense of that the world and adults will understand is, I'm afraid of being trapped in the movie theater. I'm afraid of the dark. That I remember as a kid making sense to me. And our brains are incredibly powerful. And I always say this, if you don't believe in the power of your mind, I want to do a little lemon test on you, Jen.
Do it.
Are you ready? It probably won't work on you because whenever I try and do these things on you or on Mario, they never work. You guys are too fucking smart. All right. So I want you to close your eyes. And if you're not driving, close your eyes.
I'm not driving.
So I want you to imagine walking over and grabbing a beautiful yellow lemon. And I want you to smell it. Imagine holding it up to your nose. Now I want you to cut into the lemon. And I want you to bite into it.
All right.
Tell me what's happening to your mouth right now.
It's puckering.
Okay. Are you holding... Now open your eyes. Are you holding a lemon?
No.
Why do you think that's happening?
Because you asked me to take a bite, and so I automatically started to think about what that would taste and feel like.
Yes. And so that's when you see someone having a panic attack, when you see someone having a trauma response.
Makes sense.
When you see someone having a phobia, and you're like, I don't get it. That's how powerful our minds are. Something can literally not be there, but your body will either remember it or there's an association with it.
That makes sense.
So,
well, trauma...
Don't be mean.
When I used to do trauma training, we would talk about it as if it were a record, and trauma wears a... Some of you might be too young to remember records, but I still collect records, and I didn't grow up with records, but trauma wears a groove in the brain. And, think of it as a record where there's this indentation and what keeps playing is the fight or flight song over and over again because your brain is wired now to be triggered by even the thought of that thing or the association you've made with that thing.
And it's not in your brain, it's the amygdala. And that is inner brain.
It's all reptile, baby.
That is reptile. That is, and again, fear is a funny emotion because anger, people don't like to talk about their fears. And they don't often feel it's safe to have fear, and so I'm all fear all the time. But I benefit by being, I want to be taken care of and coddled for my fears. I think when I think of you, I think you're a very brave person and you take care of yourself a lot of the time.
I do, and I think that there are consequences associated with that, and that I always tell myself, like, I can do this on my own and I don't need anybody. But we're human beings and we're wired to need each other. We need co-regulation.
Yes.
And so I often shirk it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, don't need it, don't want it. Because the person who was supposed to provide me with that co-regulation, my primary caregiver, my biological mom, was trash. So it's...
And I fall apart on the floor, and you have to come over and
we're all fucked up. We're fucked up in different ways, but we're fucked up in ways that benefit one another.
Yes.
So it all works out, everybody. So listen to this. According to the National Institute of Health, an estimated 12.5% of U.S. adults experience specific phobia at some time in their lives. Now, that's just what's reported, right? So you can imagine it's most likely higher than this.
And it's more than likely women.
Yeah.
And it's more than likely affluence.
That makes sense.
Or I'm not going to say affluence, higher socioeconomic status.
Yeah. Well, no, it totally makes sense. Like the things that people with wealth and comfort and stability are afraid of, it's like me growing up, for instance, in my 1-bedroom apartment with my mom who cleaned houses for a living. It's like, you couldn't be afraid of those things. Like there was no time for that. It's like, you don't want to walk to the store in the dark to get milk, or, across the street to the AM PM in the dark with a note from your mom when you're 8 saying, please sell my daughter cigarettes.
Oh, jeez.
Get over it. You're poor. Yeah, totally. Can you please sell me some Marlboro Lights?
Laugh at that.
I know, but it was the 80s, and that's how things went, especially in the hood. So, 12.5% of adults, right? And so now, far be it for us to call anyone weird, as we said, and we're trying to treat this with sensitivity. So we're going to use the word interesting here to describe some phobias that we found that are really interesting, to say the least.
Absolutely.
So here's a really interesting list of phobias.
Can you say this word?
No, I probably should have spelled it out phonetically when I slapped it down on my notes.
Hold on.
Arachibutyrophobia. That's a fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth. I only fear that when I'm really high and have cotton mouth, because then I might actually die.
I hate this. Now, here's the thing. I don't like the sound of someone eating peanut.
Me neither. It's like my dog eating things.
Yeah,
it's gross.
See, I'm more interested in how that came about. I'm interested in how.
Oh, the root? Yeah, we're going to have to do a follow-up episode. There's nomophobia, fear of being without your mobile phone. That's definitely a new phenomenon. Yeah. But that feeling of panic that you get when you're like, where's my phone?
Yeah. It's
Why?
an Apple Watch.
Yeah, I know. Mine is connected to my phone. It doesn't have independent Wi-Fi.
How will I know where I'm going?
I know. Well,
how will anyone talk
We're
to
directionally
me?
impaired. The city I grew up in, I can't get around without my fucking phone. Arithmophobia. It's a fear of numbers. I kind of
That makes sense. Okay.
I do not have this. Plutophobia, a fear of money.
No, I have a plutophilia.
Plutophilia. So more on this. Many people probably wish they had more money, but plutophobia is a fear of money or wealth. People with plutophobia may fear wealthy people or fear of becoming wealthy themselves. They generally dread money and having to deal with it. Now,
I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, it's the only part that I can relate to here is having grown up really, really low income and then being with my husband who, is a member of a country club and going to this country club for the first time. It gave me tremendous anxiety. I'd never been in rooms with people who had this kind of wealth and social status.
Up their ass.
Yes, exactly. Fortunately, this country club has gotten more chill and now there's more people with tattoos, so I don't feel like the odd person out. But I can understand that. Fear of having money myself. Hell no, I don't fear that. Give me all the money. I think only people with money are like, I'm afraid of all this money. Good for you.
Yeah, cut to Christian Bale.
Yeah, go fuck yourself. Xanthophobia. It's a fear of the color yellow. Okay. A blutophobia, fear of bathing. I definitely don't have that.
I know some boys who have that.
This is true. Even my kid likes to shower. Optophobia, fear of opening one's eyes. Globophobia, fear of balloons. Whoa. We definitely don't have this. Pogonophobia. It's not fear of John Wayne Gacy, whose clown name was Pogo. It's the fear of beards.
I love beards.
Yeah.
Give me a tattooed bearded man.
Hell yeah. That's my favorite kind of guy. This usually stems from an alarming incident with a bearded person. Could also arise from a person not liking that a beard hides someone's face.
That's why babies don't like beards.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the final one here is ergophobia, fear of work. I mean,
I think some of our Scrubs episode people
is true.
Had ergophobia. That should be in a dating profile. What phobias you don't want to deal with.
Yep, totally. No ergophobia for me. So, Carolyn, what are some of the more effective treatments for phobias? I imagine it's pretty varied given different phobias, but...
Yeah, I mean, again, if you ask me what will insurance cover, it's anything that is science-based and empirically studied, which is cognitive behavior therapy. Okay. And I like CBT and the kinds of methods they use with exposure therapy because CBT is very rational.
Tell me about exposure therapy because this scares me.
So let's say you have a fear of beards. Let's take that one. Because pogonophobia is just fun to say.
Yeah.
So what I might start doing is first we would talk about it. We would do something called scaling, where on a scale of 1 to 10, let's rate your fear. Again, if it's really good CBT, you might have some metrics hooked up to your blood pressure or have some biofeedback happening.
That's a good insurance.
That's the good insurance. Yeah, and that's someone who's also interested. Again, I like CBT, but I think it works better when it's got some trauma informed and some somatic stuff going on. Anyway, but now we're digressing from CBTs, which is why I don't work for insurances.
Yeah.
Because I never follow the rules.
No.
So, you scaling, you basically slowly introduce the stimulus.
Okay.
And you try and get to threshold, and then you have a safe... Shut up.
You're just like, now take you to the bear bar. You're just going to be around giant bearded dudes.
That would be on the tail end of your...
That's what you're working up to.
That's what you're working up to. But, and again, so you're implementing... thought reconstruction, you're implementing breathing, you're implementing, I'm in a safe space, like this is not scary, things like that. So the problem with CBT is you never talk about the root. It's all, think of it like with the hoarding disorder. Yeah. You're just doing, hey, we're going to do this. You can do this, and now we're just going to throw this away. See, we did it. That wasn't that bad.
But where did it come from? Why do you have this
I don't know. I mean,
place?
I suppose that to me, that's always the most fascinating part. But I come from a developmental and an attachment-based theoretical philosophy. So I'm always want to know, but where did that come from?
Yeah.
But again, first in order, the most effective treatments, you got to get diagnosed first. We want to make sure we actually classify this as a phobia.
Okay.
And in mental health, they're going to say it's either an animal, natural environment, blood injection or injury, situation, or other. And again, blood and medical stuff tends to be really, really, like kids are notoriously afraid of shots. Yeah. Things like that. So, again, another form of doing cognitive behavior therapy too would be like distracting or using other methods. So well, you can have your little spinny thing while you're freaking out.
Give me my fidget spinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me my pop socket.
So you want to be able to know that not only during the anticipation of that arousal of the stimulus, but also when you're being exposed, and then also the after effects.
All in a safe environment.
All in a safe environment, all where it's not really there, so you have that sort of rational, like, hey, it's not here. Yeah. You never push people past their threshold. You bring them, like, kind of there, and then you move back.
Got it.
I've also seen hypnosis therapy, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Like, these are things where you kind of mentally think, this is not CBT based, but where you sort of mentally talk through something in your own mind, and you get to that threshold, and then you ease off. There's lots of psychological tests that you can do that look at the nature and the severity. There's psychotropic drugs, there's education, there's coping skills, there's you name it, you can't miss it. Like I said, I always look at anything that we behaviorally do from a trauma perspective and a developmental lens. So there are many fears, like we said at the beginning, that are innate and protective. You should be afraid of a predator. Yeah. You should be afraid of pain. You should be afraid of heights. rapidly approaching objects. These are what we call ancestral threats.
Right, this is hardwired into
snakes, spiders. That's not wrong. Right. You know, and so phobias are usually acquired from our experiences or social learning. So again, think back to my case at the beginning. Phobias sometimes develop as a result of a traumatic event, sometimes even an observation or going through or watching others go through a traumatic event or actually experiencing a panic attack in a specific place and then having that happen elsewhere. So this is why it's really important. Don't put this shit on your kid. If you're afraid of needles, it's more likely if you talk about that a lot, you're going to incite that in your child.
That's true.
You have to be really careful of that anxiety.
Yeah.
Or you'll have a kid who's like, I'll double down on that. And like, you're afraid of heights. Look what I can do.
No.
So again, the typical age of onset, historically, although I wonder if it's kind of younger now with everything going on, but around 6 or 7. Okay. And again, this is important because there are lots of warning signs with kids, and they're usually somatic. And it doesn't always have to be GI issues or trouble sleeping. Tantrums, crying, which as a parent, I would think would be very confusing too, because you're going, okay, something wrong, something medically wrong, or are you misbehaving or you're trying to avoid something? Yeah. So what do? We either sympathize, which then enables that behavior, or we get aggressive,
right? And
we downplay it, which then could, again, you can miss it. So you're fucked either way.
It's hard being a parent, dude. It's really hard.
It is.
I know. Part of being a parent is perpetually feeling like you're fucking up. Yeah. But I also think that's the hallmark of being a good parent, because you're like,
at least you're worried you're putting up.
Yeah, you're putting pressure on yourself to do it right, but there's no such thing as a perfect parent, and there's no such thing as having your kid come away 100% unscathed from their childhood. I mean, God, we threaten our kid with Krampus, for Christ's sake. Like, there's no elf on the shelf in this house. I'm gonna call Krampus.
Please say who Krampus is.
Mario he knows all about Krampus.
One of the categories was things to be like scary movie things. And it was a K, and I was all Krampus, and my boyfriend was like, "What's that?" I'm like, "What's that?"
You're like, "I didn't make it up. It's legit. The Germans made it up."
He made me Google it. I'm like, "You've not known me long enough."
Show him the movie. The movie's actually funny.
Is it?
It's really good. It's got, oh my God, I can never remember his name. He was in Big Little Lies, the skinny dude. He was in Step Brothers. I love him.
Oh, John C. Reilly?
No, he's not. No, Adam Scott. Adam Scott's in it.
Really?
A few other notable people. It's hilarious. Okay. It's also dark, but it's hilarious. Okay. Anyway, we're really digressing. So, I want to talk about a relatively new focus for folks in the medical and mental health community. We really need to talk about social media induced phobias. It was interesting because I looked up social media induced phobias, and a lot of fears came up. But I think, and maybe you'll agree with me, but a lot of these fears have the potential to become phobias, because a phobia, as we mentioned, is a fear that becomes so severe that it impacts one's ability to function on a day-to-day basis. So let's talk about, I focused on one phobia that came up in association with social media usage, and it's called FOMO. You may have heard of it. Fear of missing out, which is caused by obsessive social media usage. And because we love the youths, we're going to focus on adolescents here. So this is from a Sage article and also from the National Institute of Health. The fear of missing out, FOMO, on social media refers to the apprehension that online content and interaction from others are unseen and reacted to in a timely fashion. FOMO can be problematic, leading to anxiety, interrupted sleep, lack of concentration, and dependence on social media to generate gratification. FOMO motivates individuals to continually check their social media accounts in order to remain strongly connected through their social relationships, and also to avoid the worry of not being up to date with opportunities to gain as well as losses to avoid. It can lead to compulsive behavior, and people may fail in resisting the urge to check their social media or stop being preoccupied with it. 70% of adolescents indicate that using their smartphones is like a reflex, a near automated action. As the digital world becomes increasingly prominent in people's daily lives, individuals use social media to observe what is going on in the lives of others. And this constant digital access to others enables individuals to see what they're missing out on, i.e., I'm missing out on this dinner party tonight.
Good.
I give no shits.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I have JOMO.
I don't want to go anywhere. Yeah. I have no fear of missing out, which has been found to stimulate feelings of dissatisfaction, anxiety, and unworthiness. Individuals tend to become more anxious, irritable, feel more inadequate, and have lower self-esteem after reviewing social media. Interesting. So there's these researchers, Tomzik and Salmanagic Lidsey, argue that FOMO is a type of internet addiction that predominantly affects children and adolescents. When the need to be online and acquire information as gratification are not met, individuals experience negative emotions. In their study, 20% of adolescents experience symptoms of FOMO, and 30%, I don't know where the rest of that went. Whatever. I don't know. Where the fuck did that quote go?
You probably got distracted by your phone.
I must have. Yeah. Fear of missing out. FOMO is both a predictor and a trait of internet addiction. It is a predictor because there is a strong reciprocal relationship between FOMO and social media use, which can evolve into an internet addiction, which I see addiction and phobias as kind of two sides of the same coin sometimes. Like, I have a fear of missing out. It's a phobia. I can't be away from my phone. I have this intense fear, this phobic reaction of being away from my phone or my computer because I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
And now it's interrupting my life and my ability to function.
Yeah.
So
you're right. It's like two sides of the coin. There's definitely overlap.
Yes, because it's all anxiety based, as you said.
Yeah.
Like, it all comes from an anxiety. So I know you work with teens. Would you say that a severe form of this kind of FOMO rises to the level of a phobia? Also, what can parents do when it comes to this shit? I feel so helpless, and I don't even have a kid who uses the internet yet.
Oh God. Well, okay. So no. At first, when we were writing this and I looked at that, I was like, wait, why are we talking about addictions here? But you're right. Yes, because and this is where it's actually even more linked to phobia.
Yeah.
There's a connection with social anxiety and then later agoraphobia.
Oh, interesting.
So I'll walk you through something. Hopefully I won't confuse you, but I probably will because I'm long-winded as fuck. So you're right. I'm going to include into people into their 30s, maturity-wise. Because I think, and this is me as a jaded 41-year-old, we are dealing with a world that has changed what it's like to be in your 20s. We're dealing with a world that's changed what it's like to be at any age, right?
This is true.
But my heart goes out to people in their 20s.
Yeah. And teens in particular. And teens and kids.
But no, you're absolutely right. So young adults definitely have FOMO. I think when you get older, again, that desire to want to be a part of something, when your maturity increases, that kind of goes away. You're not so your sense of self isn't so dependent on what you're doing. Okay. But it's very real. Yeah. And parents really do forget this. I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, like if you missed that party on Friday night, you were out of the loop. Yeah. That's where all the funny things happen. Mm-hmm. That's where, so-and-so got wasted or threw or you rolled a D6 in your basement. Like, I don't know what the thing is. Like, doesn't matter what the thing is. If you weren't there, you missed out. Now, social media did kind of change that because these children record everything. And I think I'm going to go adults too. We post things, things like that. So, we're not just talking anymore about missing out on a party or hanging out at the mall. Yeah. We're talking about being in the mix of social media, and these kids, it's not even about texting anymore. Yeah. No one texts anymore. They're all in, who's in your Snapchat top 10? And are you important? What is your value? And so let's take this back again to some developmental psychology, Erickson. You can look up all the different phases, but identity versus role confusion is really what adolescence is about. Who am I? Am I who I grew up, the family I grew up in? Am I my friends? Well, I want to be popular, but then there's risk involved. Yeah. So it's and I think a lot of people don't come out of that identity versus role confusion in my practice. I mean, I only just kind of found my bearings in my late 30s. I'm like, oh, this is who I am. This is what I do. And adolescence is such a delicate time. It's so awkward. You feel so left out socially. And groups now, when you're looped in socially, if you're not part of that, you are marginalized and you are left out. And this causes damage to your well-being and your physical mental health.
Yeah.
Do not think that if you are not giving your kid a phone long term that you're really helping them. Because in the end, which is, and again, every family is different. I know lots of families who do not, it's flip phone and that's it. Or it's those cricket phones or dumb phones, whatever they're called, but you have to outweigh isolating your child from what the cons of having too much screen time are.
That's hard. We're dealing with that now.
Okay.
It's all the kids, even at Liam's age, he's 6, they talk about what's the popular movie, what's the popular show. And if we're like, and we have friends who with their kids have said no TV, which is extreme. We have one friend like that.
Yeah.
And Bill and I have talked about it, and TV was a part of who we are and who we've become.
We have a whole podcast.
Right? It's true. It taught us comedy. It taught us how to be funny. Granted, should I have been watching Night Court at 8 and 9 years old and finding it funny? No.
Dan Larroquette would disagree.
Oh, I know. I love you. The best. But, even at this age, we're trying to navigate that. I want my kid to fit into the extent where he has friends and has mutual things to discuss, but we also want him to be his own person.
Well, and that's, I think, again, that's the difference that, during adolescence, teens are going to explore different social roles. During childhood, they're going to explore different social roles. Sure. I went through a lot of different phases.
Yeah.
Some not so great.
Yeah.
Where, I'm going to try this out. Okay, that's not me. Okay, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to try being the bad girl. That didn't work because I'm too afraid of getting in trouble. But again, this develops resilience, and even sort of sometimes not fitting in can also build resilience and kind of be like, fuck it, I don't like you guys anyway.
Yeah.
But if you aren't able to do this on your, again, when you are able to do this on your own, you find that sense of self and that stability, and also the instability of not worrying about it as much. And that's a lot to ask for kids nowadays, because when you and I didn't watch, so I didn't have cable. So I always missed out on kind of some of that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I would lie and fake it, and I was just really a good liar.
Yeah.
And could kind of like pick up things, or I'd hear things, so I'd add on to it. But, now when you're out of the loop, there's like a million things you're out of the loop on. And they happen so fast.
Right.
So kids are talking about, have you seen this meme? Oh, I'm already over this thing. And I'm like, good Lord, like who the fuck gives a shit? They do.
It's
crazy. And you, as an adult, that is no sillier than when we were all walking around with stupid Tamagotchis wondering if they pooped and peed.
I know.
It's so stupid, and don't, again, you gotta just get over it. They'll get over it too. But it's healthy for teens to divert to a sense of identity away from their family and look to their peer circles.
Yes.
Again, it depends on what that peer circle is.
Right.
But again, that annoying sense of significance that you see with adolescents.
Yeah.
And you look back at that and you're like, God, were we that annoying? Yes, because you're an adolescent.
Yep.
And that's the only time.
It's your job.
That's your job, and you're doing it. We don't see that type of gutsy, ballsy confidence as much. And this is what, I'm going to bring this back to the FOMO. So a 2013 study from Computers and Human Behavior. I love journals. Like there's a journal for fucking everything.
There really is.
Looked at motivational, emotional, and behavioral correlations in FOMO. Found that people under 30 feel FOMO more than any other age. And that was pre-pandemic. That was in 2013.
Okay.
So this study also correlated those who use social media were often check their phones first thing in the morning.
Interesting.
At meals, before bed, in class, and when
I do it, and I'm not under 30.
That's my number one thing, that if you're trying to get your mental health in balance, you got to cut that out.
I know.
It just sets your brain. Again, it depends though.
Yeah.
What if you're looking at your meditation app? What if you're looking at cute little pictures of puppies?
What if you're reading the news? Or, because we do everything on our phones. I aggregate all my news on my phone. So when I'm looking at my phone, I'm not always mindlessly scrolling. I might be reading a Vanity Fair or a Politico app.
And what I would tell you if you were my client is you can do all that.
Yeah.
But first I'd like you to get up, do some stretching, go for a walk, drink your coffee, go outside, take a few deep breaths, then go do that.
Yeah.
focus on certain things. But again, these are all the things that if you're doing that, you're probably going to be more susceptible to that FOMO. And here's some more shitty news about FOMO.
Awesome. Bring it on.
A survey this is so you and me too. The survey of millennials, those born between 1982 and 2004, shows that FOMO affects their spending habits. A Credit Karma and Quiltrics study looked at about 1,000 American consumers, and it found that nearly 40% of millennials have spent money they didn't have gone into debt to keep up with their peers.
It's interesting. Now, the connection for me between social media and purchasing is the advertising component. Yes. It has nothing to do with what somebody else has. It's simply that this thing is showing up in my feed because these apps are smart enough to understand your spending habits and what you're into. It's like, oh, and they're listening to you. Oh, yeah. It's like, oh, I just heard you say relaxed blazer. Now I'm going to send you all these because dumpy is in. So God forbid I wear anything form-fitting. So now I'm getting all the dumpy clothes ads. And that is a need to fit in for me.
Well, and I've definitely gone on posts and seen things people are wearing. And I've done this. Yeah. I've never gone into debt, but I've certainly been like, oh, look what she's wearing. Or I've gone and looked back at things and like, oh, what's everyone doing? Okay, what are the trends? What's happening?
Well, look at the proliferation of things like Klarna and Afterpay. It's like, okay, well, I can't really afford $150 now.
I can afford $25.
But I can afford, a quarter of that every 2 weeks. Yeah. I use that shit. Yeah. I'm like, this is great because I'm not using my credit card. Yeah. Like, that's great. I could do $25, $30 today.
So then we fit into that.
Yeah, we do.
Also, it's not just clothes. It's spending money on eating out, parties, vacations, weekend trips, music events. Mine's music events. I'll see someone going to events and I'm like, oh, man, I need to go to a Giants game. I definitely do this. Yeah. More than 27% of them feel uncomfortable saying no when a friend suggests doing something they can't afford. That's totally me. And in addition, they buy clothes, electronics, jewelry, cars they can't afford. Now, I'm not quite that bad. But again, back to FOMO. Yeah. So you asked me, is this linked to phobia? So we know, and I can attest, and maybe you can too from the experiences that you've had, the more access you have to your device, the more you develop that increase in anxiety. Sure. And again, fears, anxiety turned inward. I'm sorry, fear turned inward or anger turned inwards, depression. Turned outward, it comes off as more of an anxiety. Okay. So, that's where the depression piece comes in. Stress, decreases in life satisfaction. You're going to see these negative impacts that all then impact your self-image. So remember how we did that lemon test? Your mind's fucking strong. Yep. If you're telling yourself, even if you were just doing the morning at meals before bed and at work and when driving, let's say you do that 15 minutes a day. Yeah. How much is that? I can't do the math. I'm not a math.
15 times 5? I don't know.
We're not math.
10 times 5 is 50 plus.
Let's say it's an hour. Okay. And I'm going to look at your screen time. Like you can see.
Oh God.
Now, if I told you I want you to sit for an hour and just think about how you don't have anything good or how everyone else has something better than you or how you're not good enough for an hour. Yeah. You're going to do that. That adds up. Yeah. And so that's where it's linked to poor self-image. That's where your teen is saying, I'm missing out. I'm left out. That's where we get into that idea that I'm going to be scrutinized and rejected and judged and I'm not part of the group. That's when this can land into a phobia. Okay. And I can't, it's overwhelming. I suck. And again, that's I made that a very quick, big leap. Yeah. I know I didn't do a very great job with that, but you can feel, a short show. You can feel the link though. Yes. That the more you're doing this, the more you're creating that cascade effect.
There's a potential.
The two go hand in hand. Yes. They go hand in hand. Yeah. And you must not. I am much more fearful of a kid who has fear of missing out and that link of suicide. Because it's that much stronger. Wow. Than I would actually, I love when I get a cocky kid in there who's got a high sense of self. I'm like, all right, you'll be all right. Yeah, yeah. This is not a world for you if you don't have good self-esteem. You're fucked.
Oh, it's so sad.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's interesting, but is there hope? Come on.
Well, again, during the pandemic, I think we all kind of got to our phones and did the face test. What do I look like when I'm 80?
Well, it's also the only way we communicated. Yeah. It was the primary way that we worked, unless we were essential or frontline workers.
Yeah. And this is the primary way that people do connect. So again, it's not going anywhere. Yeah. So we're not going to say, well, you can't have it, but I am going to say, well, how can you use your device to help you? Or in my case, shame me. I put hella reminders on my phone. Yeah. If I'm on any app for more than 10 minutes, there's a reminder that shows up, and mine literally says, get off your phone, bitch, and go read a fucking book.
Oh, that's cool. I need to do that.
My next one says, if I've been on my phone for too long, get up and go for a walk or you'll feel anxious by 10 a.m. That's my
cool.
alarm.
Yeah.
So motivation comes in all form. I like to shame myself into motivation.
All right, whatever
Here's
works.
my rule of thumb. All right. Unplug.
Yep.
Give yourself that break. Leave your phone at home on your walk. Don't bring it with you. Monitor your screen time. Monitor your device time. Volunteer. Get outside. Look for authentic connections and be a good fucking person.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, the stuff that you get connected, you're going to get connected to a lot on your phone. Yeah. But ultimately, we have to go out into the three-dimensional world and go talk to people. And if this is something that makes you go, whether you're a kid or you're an adult, go talk to someone, seek help. I promise you will not be humiliated, scrutinized, or you are not a bother to anyone who has the compassion and the skill set to support you. Do not be afraid to go talk about this. It's not stupid. It's really common and it's really serious. I absolutely would never laugh at someone if they came up to me and talked about
No
that.
way. I saw something recently. It was speaking of social media, I think it was on TikTok, but it's this person. I think she does training, like personal training. And she works with a lot of people. I think she works maybe exclusively with women. And women will say to her, I don't have time to work out. And she goes, okay, I want you to go to your phone and look at your screen time.
Yes.
For the week.
Yeah.
She's like, what could you have been doing with this time? If you're telling me you don't have time to exercise and do something physical that's ultimately going to help your physical and mental health, you can do this.
It's really interesting. I mean, the whole phone thing's a whole other topic. But I ask people now, I want part of you coming into a session is I'm kind of curious about your identity on social media and what your screen time is. I want to know not just when you get up and go to sleep. I want to know how much, where are you spending your time? And it is kind of, I don't think, most teenagers don't actually look at their screen time. And again, everything in moderation. You know, again, you can have all your stuff. It's not, I'm not going to take any of that away from you.
Yeah.
But don't do it for more than a little bit. And please don't do it when you drive.
Yeah.
Stop looking at your phones when you're driving.
Yeah, no, I know that bothers me. That's dangerous for all slew of reasons.
I'm afraid of fear of getting into car accidents.
Oh my God. You can tell too when you're on the road when somebody's driving somewhat erratically, and if you're able to look into their car as you pass by, 9 times out of 10 they're fucking with their phone.
Well, and it's a different cognitive part of your brain when you go from looking at your phone to looking at real objects.
Yes.
There's a delay in connection. So when you are thinking, I'm looking at my phone, I'm going to go drive it, there's this it's something like a 3-second delay.
You can't make that transition quickly enough to be safe in the event of something unpredictable.
And that frightens me enough to sometimes where I do not want to drive.
I get it. That makes total sense. So our final thought here, I think we think phobias are scary as hell. They interfere with daily life activities and they seriously impact the sufferer. And we all have fears. We know this. Some rational, some are slightly irrational. But thankfully, most of us, only about 12.5% of us, in the US at least, most of us don't suffer from phobias. But the world has changed significantly thanks to technology, or more specifically, the rise of social media. So today's issues associated with obsessive social media usage may seem mild compared to some of the other fears and phobias we discussed. But make no mistake that with developing brains in particular, phobias could develop and become pervasive, establishing patterns and behaviors that can seriously impact the quality of the life of a young person. And as they become an adult, their adult life. And so, take phobias seriously.
Yes.
They're not something to be monetized on MTV. If you find yourself in a situation where you have a fear or a phobia or whatever that's preventing you from living life in a way that is healthy and functional and whatever the case may be, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say normal. Seek help.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's out there.
It's out there.
Somewhere.
Hopefully you're not afraid of beards. Because beards are awesome. But if you are, mad respect.
Yeah.
We get it. Phobias come in all forms. Anyway, you guys, we hope you enjoyed our
Happy New Year!
Right? Our first episode of 2024, recorded at the end of 2023.
Good job.
Yeah, we hung in there. So, yeah, don't forget to like and follow us and all that bullshit.
Give us 5 stars.
Give us 5 stars. Follow us on TikTok, The World According to Jen and Carolyn.
Carlos.
The World According to Jen and Carlton, my stepdad's name. Anyway.
Did I just get fired?
Yeah, no, you didn't. I promise. All right, you guys. Good night. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
So cute.
I love this.
This is good.